Greetings, folkers. It's Haley, and welcome to the first game between two of my participants in the chess program. This is their diagnostic game, and I'm just going to go through it, and I'm going to give each one of them some personalized tips. So we have my sister Quinn is on the white pieces here. Her username is that. And my sister Reagan is on the black pieces, and that is her username. And they played a game against each other a couple days ago, and here we go. So we great start. I like this already. E4, E5, both sides taking the center. D4 is a strange move, but it is an opening. Like normally, after both sides put their pawns in the center, you usually want to develop a knight next. Like that's usually what white wants to do. Also, you could put that bishop out there. Usually, you don't want to play this because there's no reason to bring your queen out in the middle of the board when black can develop and also attack it. That's basically why d4 isn't good. But this was just their diagnostic game. This was before I even taught them any opening principles, so that's fine. So let's continue. Knight c6, defending the pawn, good. White needs to be careful since this is now under attack. They react well. Takes. F3. This was my first point that I wrote down. F3 I would not have played. I would have probably played F4 to attack the knight and then develop the knight behind that. Because then not only do you get a tempo on the knight, this is going back to what I taught you guys yesterday, not only getting a tempo on the knight, but then you can develop this knight right behind it and also control center squares. And white is easily better in this position. After white plays f3, you block this knight from going to f3, and this knight gets to stay in the center without any attackers, right? So f3 is a suboptimal move, but that's fine. D6, knight c3, developing. D6 from Reagan here, blocking in that bishop. That's a little bit suboptimal, but again, I didn't tell them about any of that stuff yet. Bishop e6, just developing a piece, maybe with the intention of castling queenside. Knight h3. Knight h3 is not good. Like, you don't want this to happen. You don't want this, you don't want this and that to happen because of the doubled pawns and also this wide open diagonal. Queen to h4 check is devastating here because you can't block it and the king has to move. So a tip that I would give here for Quinn is to not put your knight on the side like this, especially so if it can be taken by a bishop, which would lead to doubled pawns. That is just a very bad situation. But instead, from black here, we get pawn to f5, which just cleanly hangs a pawn. Like, there's nothing to be said about that. That just completely gives away a pawn. It is not captured. Instead, the pawn is defended. You take, and then, oh, okay, yeah, this is a diagnostic game. But yeah, that's just a very clean free bishop for Reagan, and she does indeed take it. C takes d3. Now this d3 pawn is under attack by both queen and knight. It is not captured. Instead, bishop b4 is played. This is good. I like this from black, actually, because once you're up this 3 points of material, trading off is good. So if you're just like, if a3 takes, white is happy here. Like, they might put the rook here, or I'm sorry, black is happy here because even though that white could put the rook here, black is up a piece and developed, and this pawn structure kind of sucks, right? And this diagonal is still open, right? G6, very kind of slow move. This is kind of a thing that I want to get across as well. Like, the speed of your moves matters. Like, you want all of your moves to be spent doing something useful. And this isn't really a useful move. All this does is open up dark squares around your king when you have traded off your bishop. And white has their dark squared bishop. So you have to be very careful about making moves like this. There's nothing that can happen right now, but opening up these dark squares is not good in general. Yeah, I put here you don't want to open your dark squares. Also noticing that black's king is in the middle and this knight is unguarded will help strategizing in this position. So moves like queen e2 attacking the knight and lining up on the king, rook e1 attacking the knight and lining up on the king, even something like bishop g5 attacking the queen. Those are all productive moves in this position. We get bishop b2 from white, which is going to turn out to be pretty powerful. Knight f6, just developing a piece. d4, attacking the knight, taking a tempo, very good. Knight c6. You do have to be a little careful of the fact that this could be a fork at some point, which is why Quinn's next move is absolutely fantastic. She plays c4. I was very impressed at this move. This move only gives away a bishop, but at the same time, it opens up your king for check. And if knight e7 is played, d5, opening up that bishop's pin on the knight. So white can get back into the game really quick with tricky moves like that, but I definitely didn't expect Quinn to see that. So castles from Reagan here. d5. Quinn finds the fork, and she's going to win back her piece. Knight takes and takes. Right? This is categorized as a mistake. I think the computer is being a little bit harsh here, but basically, reason is that you could have taken the pawn on d5 with the queen instead of the bishop. I don't know why that's so much better. You know, part of reviewing your chess games is like knowing when to listen to the computer and when not to listen to the computer, right? Knight f4, attacking the bishop. The computer says it's bad, but I think it's a good move. g5, just giving up the bishop. So, advice I'd give Reagan here is whenever your opponent makes a move, before you think about what you want to accomplish in the position, you have to think about what is your opponent looking to do? Well, the idea of this move is very clear. You would like to take this bishop. So as black, you shouldn't let that happen. You should move it, right? You should just move it because you can't. Well, I guess you could play 97, but going backwards is really not like if you don't have to, then why would you? Right. So you could look knight f4. What does that attack? Yes, it attacks the bishop, so I move it. That's your thought process there. But g5 is played. Whatever. It's a learning moment, and Quinn gets the piece back and is now completely winning. And I said that this was the clearest occurrence of I don't know what to do syndrome. This position is so like from Reagan's perspective here, she was really struggling. This position is objectively hard to play for black due to the obscene control of white's bishop and general lack of development. But some good things for black do include strengthening the pawn structure, like if you play h6 to defend this pawn, right? Strengthening the pawn structure, or clamping down on the bishop by playing f6 and just blocking that diagonal. You just have to notice things about your opponent's position and how you can guard against that. That's like a good thing to do if you don't know. But b6 is certainly not a bad move. I'm not going to complain about b6. a4, as soon as this pawn gets pushed, we're launching that forward. It's a great instinct by Quinn, although that is guarded twice, so you won't be able to play a5 right away. Rook e8, taking the open file, bringing your rook to the center. Fantastic move from Reagan there. Rook a2. I wrote here, not a good idea to move the rook off the back rank and remove its defenders. Like the rooks usually want to be connected on the back rank. That is, they can see each other. And if you play like rook a2, it disconnects the rooks and it also undefends this rook. So rook a2 is not really a good idea positionally, usually in a lot of these moves, which is why it's labeled as an inaccuracy. a5. G3, just kind of, I don't know what to do syndrome from Quinn here as well. What I would probably be looking to do as white here is to land this. Like, this is just a very clean fork because it is guarded by that bishop, and knight attacks rook and king. But I definitely don't blame her for not seeing that since that bishop is quite far away. So instead we G3, H6, knight F6 is still possible. This is the last time I'm going to be mentioning it. It's just always going to be on the board when this bishop is here and this knight is here. Bishop A3. So yeah, I don't like this move because it disallows knight f6 and it weakens the control that white has near black's king. The bishop is much better on b2, I put. Rook a6 and f4. Absolutely excellent move by Quinn because no matter what you take with, then you open up the f file if you take the rook. If you take with the pawn, then you open up the g file to check the king. And if you take with the knight, right, taking with the knight is probably the worst option, but you still even end up with an open file in your control and 1 point of material up. So excellent, excellent move is f4 by Quinn. Knight to d4. And now this rook a2 move actually looks genius because it can swing over here and give a check. and start to lead to a checkmating attack. But Quinn did not see that and instead just took the free knight, which of course I'm not going to complain about. Now knight f6 is actually possible again. c5. I was saying that here c6 could win back the knight, but actually it can't because this is a check, right? c5 attacking the queen. Now obviously you should just back up on that same line, attacking the rook and keeping your knight protected. Queen a1 is played, which just gives away the knight. That's obviously suboptimal, but Quinn follows it up with a good move, which is rook to d1, attacking the queen, and then queen to g5 from Reagan. This is a misclick. I don't really say much about that. Takes, takes, and yeah, there's not really much to do here. Reagan does have a bunch of pawns that she's trying to push, but you know, there's a white has a lot of material to stop that, so that's not really going to be much of an issue. H4 takes, rook to b1, putting pressure on this pawn, preventing it from coming forward. c3. Now this pawn is just free for the taking, but you could also play rook c1 if you don't see that. There's like a gazillion and one ways to stop this pawn. King to h1 is a very, very odd move. I'm not really so sure about this. I mean, the best thing that I can think of to come from this move is that you can now play rook to g1, but like I said, you should just take this pawn so you don't have to worry about it. c2. Now rook g1, rook c1 are all good moves. You just got to get your rook to b1. Ugh, bishop b4 is played. Okay, this is just not remembering how pawns move. Like, that's all this is. Let's hope Quinn does not play moves like that again. A takes b4, rook takes. Fantastic move getting rid of the attacker. And now this king is bare naked and will... in the chess world, of course. A5 does just lose that pawn, because although it is protected by the queen, the pawn would be protected by the rook. Not a great move by white, but it is not taken. Now, takes, trading off pieces when you're up material is always a good idea. A6. And as far as knowing what to do in this position, I would honestly be looking at stalemate, because you have a rook versus a rook and queen. This isn't really winnable. These pawns are doubled. You have no king activity, a lot of control on this diagonal, as it's been the case for this whole game. So you should be looking to stalemate here. I would just like sacrifice my rook and then push all my pawns down the board and try to get white to stalemate. That's like the best thing to do. 5 takes like just mopping up all the pawns. Reagan sacrifices, and in this position, there's literally mate in one on the board. The Wi-Fi is getting a little slow. There's literally mate in one on the board. Rook here is mate in one because that gives a check, and the king can't come forward or go to this file because the queen controls that. Also, just as in general way to learn how to checkmate with queen and rook, we use something called the ladder mate. So let's just get this Wi-Fi to cooperate here. So king to b7, right? And then what you do is you essentially walk the king to the edge of the board. So you play queen f3 check, the king has to go this way. Then you give another check, the king can't go this way, so it has to keep walking this way. And you repeat this ad nauseum until the king is on the edge of the board, and then you deliver the final blow because the king has run out of room to escape. And that is checkmate. Also, another permutation of this is your rook. You can actually checkmate the king with just a queen king as follows. The rule of thumb is that you know how a knight moves in chess? Like a knight moves like this or like this. You want to put the king in something called knight opposition. So a move like queen f3, or I'm sorry, queen c6 would be good here. You are putting the king in knight opposition. And essentially you want to keep doing this until the king, so you cut the king off on the back rank here, until the king is forced to the side of the board. And once the king is forced to the side of the board, you're going to bring your king to this corner. The king will slowly walk down, right? You're just cutting off more and more space that the king can go to. He can only move to here. And then you can just deliver a very quick checkmate in the corner like that. And that is how you would checkmate. You put the king in knight opposition, you walk it to the edge of the board, and then you bring your king and deliver the checkmate. That is the basic way to do that. I can work with you if you want more help with that, Quinn or Reagan. But that's just how you do it for future reference. There's not really much else to go through here. The rest of this game is really just Quinn not knowing how to checkmate with queen and king. So the game ends up in her giving up, and it's a draw. It ends up in her giving up, and it's a draw. And folks, that'll do it. That is the video, and I will see you in the next one.